So welcome to all of you.
Problem. Nani na huna kasi yung kwalan.
So students, as you know, in our previous lecture, we were discussing about the subtypes of the spontaneous abortion. We discussed about the threatened abortion, inevitable abortion, incomplete abortion, complete abortion. Okay, so we resume our previous discussion and move on to the next discussion. In this discussion, in this today's meeting, I will discuss about other two subtypes of the spontaneous abortion. One is the missed abortion and other one is the septic abortion. So let's start from the missed abortion. It means mother has missed the baby. What does it mean? Missed abortion. Missed abortion means there is a intrauterine fetal demise. What is that? Here is the IUD. IUD has happened. IUD means intrauterine. Okay, students need permission. Intrauterine fetal demise. Intrauterine fetal demise has happened. So when there is intrauterine fetal demise has happened and uterus makes no attempt to expel it. Uterus makes no attempt to expel it. It means fetus is already dead inside the uterine cavity, but there is no uterine contraction and no external cervical os opening. So what has happened? IUD, intrauterine fetal demise, has happened. It means baby has died inside the uterine cavity, but the uterus makes no attempt to expel it. It means the baby is inside the uterine cavity, but that baby is the dead baby. So when the baby is dead, keep in mind. So these are the membranes, are the amniotic membranes, and then this is the placenta. So baby is dead. Baby is not getting no nutrition from the placenta through the umbilical cord. So what will be the clinical presentation, clinical feature? How will you call it abortion? Clinical feature, first clinical feature is that the patient should be present less than 24 completed weeks of the gestation. Then you will think it is the abortion. So when the female present to you less than 24 completed weeks of gestation, then you will think it is the case of the abortion. And that female that is presenting to you less than 24 completed weeks of the gestation with the complaint of what are the complaints? Per vaginal bleed. So first complaint is the per vaginal bleed. So first complaint is the PV, per vaginal bleeding, or the per vaginal bleed. In this case, the per vaginal bleed, here this per vaginal bleeding will be mild. So this bleeding will be mild, but color of this bleeding will not be fresh red or bright red. Color of this bleed, per vaginal bleed, will be dark brown. What is that? Dark brown blood. This is different color, dark brown blood. Bleeding will be mild. Why? And why the color of the blood is dark brown? So this dark brown blood is due to degeneration of placenta. So this blood, that is the dark and brown blood, that is due to the degeneration of the placenta. Okay, so why? Because this is the uterine cavity, here is the placenta and umbilical cord, then is the baby. So when this placenta will degenerate, so this will cause the blood from the vagina. So this blood will be old dark brown blood that is due to the degeneration of the placenta. This is the pervaginal bleed. And along with this pervaginal bleed, you will feel other thing. Okay, sir, screen is blur. Okay, I can clear it. Not worried. Now, okay. So the patient will present to you with the pregnancy of less than 24 completed weeks of the gestation with the complaint of pervaginal bleed. And when you will check there the pervaginal bleeding, that bleeding will be mild, not too much, because membranes are still continuing, not ruptured, but the brown color of the blood will be dark brown blood. This dark brown blood is due to degeneration of the placenta. It means placenta is going to degenerate. Why? Because fetus is dead. Fetus is dead. No need of the nutrition. Placenta is going to degenerate and leading to the dark brown blood from the vagina. Clear? And other thing you will feel, second thing, not pervaginally, you will feel there is a regression of pregnancy symptoms. Second thing is the regression of pregnancy symptoms. You know, when the fetus is dead, keep in mind, fetus is dead, placenta is going to degenerate. So definitely beta HCG that is produced by placenta, it will be less or more. What do you think? Placenta is going to degenerate. Placenta is going to die or degenerate. So beta HCG is produced by the placenta. So beta HCG level decreases. So when the beta HCG level decreases, so definitely there will be less vomiting. Vomiting, you know, during the pregnancy there is a vomiting, and that vomiting and nausea is due to the production of the beta HCG. Less nausea, no nausea, no vomiting. And then, you know, progesterone level is also less. So when the progesterone is less from the ovary, because fetal is dead, so progesterone level is less. So it will also less breast engorgement. So decreased breast engorgement. Breast will not properly increase in size. So these are the which one symptoms? Pregnancy symptom. You know, during the pregnancy, female has the vomiting, nausea, breast engorgement, and also there will be a decreased in urinary frequency. Decreased in urinary frequency. So why the urinary frequency is decreasing? First, tell me why urinary frequency. It means number of times for passing the urine. You know, normally female passes the urine 2 times a day, but during the pregnancy, female passes the urine 4 times a day. It means frequency has increased. What has increased? Urinary frequency has increased. Okay, just wait. I'm going to switch on the light. Just a few seconds. Okay, welcome back. You know, it's a problem in Pakistan about the light. No, not a wasting of the toxins and so on. No. Anyone? Decreased urinary frequency. During the pregnancy, why the urinary frequency is more? If the female wants to excrete the toxins, then 2 times urine is sufficient to excrete the toxins. Actually, look at here. This is the bladder, female bladder. Okay, so during the pregnancy, there's a pressure on the bladder. Uterus is going to increase in size because inside the uterus there is a baby. So uterus will increase in size, and then this uterus puts a pressure on the urinary bladder. Therefore, the female feels her bladder is full multiple times, and then she wants to pass the urine. But during when there is an intrauterine fetal demise, fetus is not putting too much pressure on the urinary bladder. So the urinary bladder is not feeling too much pressure. So therefore, there will be a decrease in the urinary frequency. Urinary frequency will decrease because uterus is not putting too much pressure on the bladder. So these are the first sign clinical. There will be a dark brown blood, and then there will be a regression of pregnancy symptoms. Along with it, what are the third clinical features, other clinical features? So next you will examine. Examination. What is your first examination? First examination is the general physical examination, general physical exam. So mild blood, not too much, so that patient will be stable. Patient will be stable. Second examination is the abdominal examination. On the abdominal examination, what will you feel? There is a tenderness or no tenderness? So let's abdominal examination. On the abdominal examination, you will feel, you will check, oh sorry, you will check fundal height of the uterus. What will you check? Fundal height of the uterus. What I tell you, what is the fundal height of the uterus? Look, this is the female, and here is the umbilicus of the female, pubic symphysis, and so on. This is the pregnant female. I am discussing this is only pregnant female. Consider this is the pregnant female. Inside this one is the uterus. Here is the uterus or uterine cavity. This is the uterine cavity. Inside the uterus is a baby. So this one is the baby. Here is the baby. When the female is pregnant, and the total age of the pregnancy, it means when the total life of the gestation is 12 weeks pregnancy. Which one? 12 weeks pregnancy. When the pregnancy is 12 weeks, then the fundal height of the uterus will reach up to the pubic symphysis. Pubic symphysis. This is the fundal height. Keep in mind, when there is a 12 completed weeks of the pregnancy, what is the total duration of pregnancy? When the pregnancy is of 12 weeks, then the fundal height, it means uterus, this is the uterus, fundus of the uterus will reach up to the pubic symphysis. This is the uterus. And when the pregnancy is of 22 weeks, second point, pregnancy is of the 22 weeks, then the fundus of the uterus will reach up to the umbilicus. You can measure it. So if this is the baby and total dates of the pregnancy, total period of the pregnancy is 22 weeks, then this uterus will reach up to the umbilicus. This one. If the pregnancy is of the 36 weeks, then fundus of the uterus will reach up to the Xiphi sternum or Xiphi sterni. So when the complete, this is the Xiphi sterni. So then uterus will reach up to the Xiphi sterni. So these are the three periods for the pregnancy and total fundal height. So look, like now you will tell me, when there is the pregnancy of the 12 weeks, normal pregnancy, what will be the fundal height? Fundus of the uterus will reach up to the pubic symphysis. When the pregnancy is of the 22 weeks, then the fundus of the uterus will reach up to the umbilicus. When the pregnancy is of the 36 weeks, then the fundal or fundus of the uterus will reach up to the pubic symphysis. So here on the abdominal examination, what will you check? You will check the fundal height of the uterus. So here inside the uterus, what has done? Intrauterine demise. Intrauterine fetal demise has occurred. So when there is intrauterine fetal demise, so uterus will increase in size or decrease in size? Definitely, uterus will be smaller for days. Uterus will be smaller for days. What is that? Uterus will be smaller for days. What does it mean? It means, let's consider the total period of the pregnancy is 22 weeks. Normally, uterus should be up to the umbilicus, but you feel abdominally that your fundal height of the uterus is up to pubic symphysis. So then total days are 22 weeks, but fundal height is up to the pubic symphysis. It means uterus is smaller for days. On the abdominal examination, what will you check? You will check the fundal height of the uterus. Normally, when there is a pregnancy of 12 weeks, that uterus or fundus of the uterus should be pubic symphysis, and 22 weeks pregnancy, it should be up to umbilicus, and 36 weeks of the pregnancy, fundal or the fundus of the uterus should be at the Xiphi sternum. But in this case, because intrauterine fetal demise has occurred, so fundal height of the uterus is not increasing, then what will you check? You will check the uterus will be smaller for days. That shows that, consider, if the pregnancy is of the 22 weeks, normally uterus should be umbilicus, but when you check it through the abdominal examination, in the 22 weeks of the pregnancy, uterus has reached up to the pubic symphysis. Okay, don't worry, I can repeat it again and again multiple times. Now it will be clear. So on the abdominal examination, what will you check? You will check the fundal height of the uterus. So what is the fundal height of the uterus? Fundal height of the uterus means when the pregnancy increases, height of the uterus increases. When the pregnancy is of 12 weeks pregnancy, fundus of the uterus should be reached up to the pubic symphysis. When the pregnancy is of the 22 weeks, fundal height of the uterus should be reached up to the umbilicus of the female. Here is the umbilicus, it should reach up to the umbilicus. When the pregnancy is 36 weeks, then fundal height of the uterus should be reached up to the Xiphi sterni. This is the normal fundal height related to pregnancy. But in this case, what has happened? In this case, there is a intrauterine demise. Inside the uterus, fetal is dead. So uterus will be smaller for days because uterus is not increasing in size or length. So consider, in the missed abortion, when you think the pregnancy is of the 22 weeks, normally fundal height of the uterus should be up to umbilicus. But in this case of the 22 weeks pregnancy, fundal height is up to pubic symphysis. That will show you that fundal height is not increasing relatively according to the pregnancy period. So that will be, uterus will be smaller for days. Clear? And then you will auscultate. On the, put the step on the belly of the mother, and you will auscultate. On the auscultation, when you will auscultate, you will feel fetal cardiac activity. When fetal cardiac activity start at 7th week of the pregnancy, 7th completed week of the gestation. But here fetal cardiac activity will be absent. Why? Because there is a intrauterine fetal demise. Intrauterine demise has happened. So therefore, on the auscultation, there will be no fetal cardiac activity. Clear? And third examination is the pervaginal exam. So when you will do the PV or the pervaginal examination, you will feel only there will be an old dark brown blood. Old dark brown color blood. Why? Because old dark brown color blood is due to degeneration of the placenta. Clear? And next you will do the ultrasound, pelvic ultrasound. When you will do the pelvic ultrasound, you do the pelvic ultrasound to confirm fetal demise has happened or not happened. So on the pelvic ultrasound, you feel there is no fetal cardiac activity. Fetal cardiac activity is absent. So that will confirm. What it will confirm? It will confirm the intrauterine demise, IUD. So it will confirm fetal demise, intrauterine fetal demise. Clear? So what is your management? Keep in mind, intrauterine fetal demise has happened, but uterus makes no attempt to expel it. It means inside the uterus, fetus is dead, but uterus is making no attempt to expel it. Next step is your management. How will you manage this kind of the abortion, missed abortion? What will you do? So there are the two ways for the management. Okay, yeah, definitely stimulate the labor because uterus is making no attempt to expel it. Definitely you will induce the labor. So first management is the active and second management is the conservative. Active and conservative. First look at the active management. And active management is preferred over conservative management. It is preferred. So when any management is preferred, so you will prefer that management first. So when first in the active management, induction of labor, what will you do? You will do the induction of labor. When there is a more than 12 weeks of the pregnancy, when the pregnancy is more than 12 weeks, then you can induce the labor. So induction of labor can start. There are the multiple step for the induction of the labor. First, you will give the injection oxytocin. Injection oxytocin because it is strong myometrial contractor, 10 international units IV. So you will give the oxytocin intravenously 10 international units or 10 units because it is a strong myometrial contractor. Along with injection oxytocin, you will give the vaginal pessary. What will you give? You will give the vaginal tablet. Put the tablet inside the vagina. And that tablet is the prostaglandin. Prostaglandin analog. What are the prostaglandin analogs tablets?
Misoprost.
Yeah, misoprost. Okay, so you can give the misoprost. Clear? So how much? 3 milligram. What is the function of this prostaglandin analog? prostaglandin analog will cause the dilatation of cervix. It means one side you are trying to contract the uterus and other side you are dilating the uterus. So when the uterus, cervix. So when the cervix will dilate on the above, uterus is contracting, definitely baby will be expelled out. Okay. So by this way, what is the success rate? 99% success rate. What is the successful? It is 99% it is successful. You know what is the active management? You will induce the labor. How can you induce the labor? You can give the injection oxytocin 10 units intravenously, and you can give the vaginal tablets. We can call them vaginal Pesre. That is the prostaglandin analog, misoprostol or misoprost, and you can give the 3 milligram that uses for the dilatation of the cervix. What is its outcome? Outcome is 99%. What is its outcome of this treatment? Outcome of this treatment is 99% it is successful. But consider 1% it is not successful. Then what will you do? If fail, if this technique fail, if this technique don't work, then you will do the hysterotomy. What will you do? Do hysterotomy. Otomy mean open, ectomy mean remove. So hysterotomy mean open the uterus, open or incise, make the incision in uterus. So hysterotomy. Hysterotomy mean open the uterus and remove the dead fetus. But keep in mind, so in the hysterotomy versus D and C versus C-section. What is the difference in C-section and in the hysterotomy? In the C-section, you will definitely make the incision into the uterus, but in the hysterotomy, you are also making the incision into the uterus. In the hysterotomy, there will be a dead fetus or the stillbirth. But in the C-section, maybe there could be a live birth. Clear? Next one, treatment. After giving the medical treatment, next step is the suction curettage. Second way of the treatment is suction curettage. So when the total, keep in mind, when the total time for the pregnancy is less than 12 weeks, keep in mind, this is the important point. You will do the active management. Here I can go with your management point of view. You can go do the active management when the pregnancy is more than 12 weeks. When the pregnancy is more than 12 weeks, then you can give the oxytocin. Okay, don't worry. Okay, I should go with the screen. So keep in mind, when the pregnancy is more than 12 weeks, you will not do the suction curettage. Why? Yesterday we studied. When the pregnancy is more than 12 weeks, don't do the suction curettage.
Because the baby organ is already made.
Yeah, baby organs are already developed. So you can't do the suction curettage. But when the period of the gestation or the period of the pregnancy is less than 12 weeks, so baby organs are not properly developed. So what will you do? You will pass the rubber tubing through the cervical os, and then you can attach that rubber tubing with the suction machine, and then you can do the suction curettage. But in this case, suction curettage is done. So now you will tell me next point. Can you do the DNC? when the baby or the period for the gestation is less than 12 weeks. Can you do DNC? Yesterday I gave you the idea. Can you perform the DNC when the age of the gestation is less than 12 weeks? Why? And why? Can you tell me the reason?
To check histopathological in maybe the female goes to irregular menstruation cycle. So
Keep in mind, here I'm going to discuss. Here you can do the DNC. There are two reasons. What is the first reason? Two reason is that first reason, it is a missed abortion. Keep in mind. Reason number one. Two reason you can't do the, it means DNC is contraindicated. Reason one, you know, we have studied that inside the uterus, fetus is dead. And the uterus is making no attempt to expel it. It means there is no myometrial contraction and there is no opening of the cervix. Cervix is not open. So cervix is closed. When the cervix is closed and then forcefully you enter the curate, so it can cause the damage to the cervix. Cervix will damage. Cervix is not open. So you forcefully enter the curate. So cervix will damage. When the cervix will damage in the future, this cervix will become incompatible to hold the baby. Clear? This is the first reason you never do the D and C when the pregnancy is less than 12 weeks. Clear? Next point. Next point is that if you do the D and C, endometrium is not properly developed. So endometrial walls can stuck. A whole the endometrium you can lesion it out. So total endometrium damage. Total endometrial wall damage. So therefore, you will not do the D and C. So in this case, D and C is contraindicated. D and C is contraindicated when the age of the baby is less than 12 weeks. So this is the done. So next one is the conservative management.
Sir, please,
So
what is the second reason?
Yes.
What is the second reason, please?
Second reason is that if you do the D and C, dilatation and curettage, what will you do? Entering the curate. So fetal parts are not properly developed. Already membranes are ruptured, going to ruptured, and then this curate can damage the complete endometrial wall. You know, endometrium has the glands, endometrium has the other blood cells, blood layers, so that will completely damage and glands will properly damage, and then there could be a complication in near future. So next one we have studied, there are the two way of the management. First one is the active management, we have completed it, and next one is the conservative management. Conservative management means do nothing, just leave it. So 80% cases with the intrauterine fetal demise, they enter into labor. 80% enter into labor automatically. No need to give the oxytocin, no need to give the prostaglandin analog. Automatically enter into the labor and then they will expel out the baby. But here it has the complication. What is the complication? This complication is too much important. So if you do the conservative management, then complication can happen. What is the complication? Complication is that D and DIC can happen. DIC can happen. What is the DIC? Look, here is the uterus. Inside the uterus, fetal is dead. And then this is the membranes. Okay. And you know, this dead fetus will release tissue factor, because tissues of the fetus is going to rupture. So this dead fetus will release the tissue factors. Okay, and these tissue factors will activate. What they will activate? They will activate the extrinsic pathway of coagulation. Extrinsic coagulation pathway. So then this will lead to the DIC. This DIC means disseminated intravascular coagulation. Disseminated intravascular coagulopathy or coagulation. Coagulopathy. So it means there could be a coagulopathy. Okay, so this coagulopathy can happen and that can cause the further complications. So this is the one complication like thrombophilia and so on. So this is the complication is the DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulopathy, because dead fetus will release the tissue factors that will activate the extrinsic pathway of coagulation, and that will lead to the DIC. Therefore, our active management is preferred over the conservative management. Clear? So here I give you a case. Now you will discuss, you will find out the case. Now you can solve this case. Case is 29 years old female comes to gynae OPD. Comes to the gynae OPD with 5th week's pregnancy with pervaginal bleeding. Okay, you do pelvic ultrasound with no fetal cardiac activity. What is your diagnosis? What is your diagnosis? Keep in mind, 29-year-old female comes to the gynae OPD with the 25th week pregnancy. So with pervaginal bleed and you do the pelvic ultrasound and ultrasound, you feel there is no fetal cardiac activity. So two things come to in your mind. You know, actually first thing is the threatened abortion. Threatened abortion. And second thing is the missed abortion. Okay, welcome back. So as we were discussing about the case, and the case was the first you will think this could be a threatened abortion or this could be a missed abortion. So because female is presenting at the 5th week of the pregnancy, so at 5th week definitely there will be a no fetal cardiac activity. So you will first confirm it, the fetal cardiac activity at the 7th week. So you can repeat the ultrasound at 7th week, but before that you can keep in mind there could be a missed abortion. So if at 7th week no fetal cardiac activity, then threatened abortion, or before is the missed abortion. So next one, last type of the subtype of the abortion or spontaneous abortion is the septic abortion. Name is indicating septic. So it is not a true form of the abortion. It is just only infection after abortion has occurred. So septic abortion is the infection occurring after any type of the abortion. So what is that? Infection occurring after any type of the abortion, maybe that is spontaneous, maybe threatened, inevitable, after any type of abortion. So that is known as septic abortion, sepsis, septic type. So infections occurring after any type of the abortion, that is the septic abortion. So it is not true form of abortion. Which one? We have studied other abortion that is also not true form abortion. What is other form? Threatened, yeah. Threatened abortion is also not a true form of the abortion, just there is a threat to abort. So same as here, this is not a true form of the abortion. Actually, there is infections after any kind of the abortion. So these infections, so what are the pathology? Are the pathogenesis. Same name is indicating that infections can happen due to the two reasons. Infections can happen after the abortion due to two reasons. First reason and most common reason is the when you use the unsterilized instrument, when the instruments are not sterilized properly. Unsterilized instrument. And second one, when you will do the illegal abortion, I will discuss what is the illegal abortion. So when you perform the illegal abortion and during the illegal abortion, you use the unhygienic method. Use of unhygienic methods. Unhygienic methods for the illegal abortion and the unsterilized instruments. They can cause the infections after abortion. So that will come under the heading of the septic abortion. So you know there is a pathogens that can cause the infection. So which one pathogen most commonly cause the infections? So which one are the pathogens? So some pathogens are gram positive bacteria and some pathogens are the gram negative bacteria. So there could be Pseudomonas, there could be E. coli, Proteus, Klebsiella, Clostridium perfringens. So these are the Pseudomonas, E. coli, Proteus, Clostridium perfringens. So most commonly these pathogens can cause the infection. Clear? So then what are the clinical presentation? Sir, okay, what is the question? Sir, two reasons and one and same because unhygienic instrument and okay. Both reasons are different, not the same. Look at here. One is the unsterilized instrument. Here you are using the instruments, maybe instruments for the D&C or the surgical blades, whatever, different instruments that are unsterilized, okay, not properly sterilized. Here is the unhygienic methods. This is the method. Maybe you are doing the abortion by the manual removal of the parts of the fetal, okay, without gloves. Okay, you are not using any instrument, just you are putting the pressure on the abdomen and then propelling the baby from the external cervical os. So that is the methodology. The method you used is unhygienic. Maybe you are not washing your hands properly, or the putting your hand inside the lower female genital tract and then trying to push the head of the baby with your manual removal. So that is illegal. And for the illegal abortion, you will go to the nearby any midwife or nearby any nurse institution or nearby any dye type. Okay, so that Aya type. So that can use the unhygienic method, not proper. She is not expert Okay, then the methods that she is using are the unhygienic. Okay, next one. These pathogens can cause this. So next one is the clinical features. So definitely infection will happen after the abortion. So here the female will come less than 24 completed weeks of the gestation. Completed weeks of gestation. But here with history of abortion, with the history of abortions. What is that? It means female will come within 24 weeks of the completed weeks of the gestation, but she will give you the history of abortion. It means abortion has already done, and she will say, she will complain to you, there is some discharge from the vagina. And what is that complaint? She will complain of pervaginal discharge. Here is the pervaginal discharge. She will complain of pervaginal discharge. It means female will come to you with the history of abortion and then with the pervaginal discharge. And what will be the pervaginal discharge? That will be mucopurulent. Mucopurulent. Pus, it means pus. Why it is pus from the vagina? Because there is a severe kind of infection into the uterine cavity or the lower female genital tract. So there will be a mucopurulent vaginal discharge. Clear? And then you will do the examination. Okay. And generally in the general physical examination, there's an infection. So what will happen? So she will come with raised temperature or the fever. And she also has the tachycardia. But she will be stable. Yeah. Why it is the fever? Because there is severe infection. So infections can cause the fever, and also due to the high grade fever, there could be a tachycardia. So female will come to you with the raised temperature, tachycardia, and then you will do the abdominal examination. On the abdominal examination, what will you feel? There could be a pelvic tenderness. Pelvic tenderness. Why? Because there could be a lower pelvic inflammatory diseases. So that the lower pelvis can cause the inflammation. Due to that inflammation, there will be a tenderness. So pelvic will be tender on the examination. Next point, after the examination, you will do the pelvic ultrasound. Pelvic ultrasonograph. On the pelvic ultrasound, that you will feel, what will you feel? No fetal part, because fetus has been already aborted. Abortion has already occurred. Plus, you will feel the gas shadows in uterine cavity. Why you are feeling the gas shadows in the uterine cavity? You know pathogen, especially the pathogen that is responsible for the gas gangrene, and that pathogen is the Clostridium. Clostridium perfringens. That can cause the gas, production of the gas, and that can cause the gas gangrene. So inside the uterine cavity, there will be a gas shadow that is produced by the Clostridium perfringens. Okay, along with it, there will be some complications. What will you feel? There are the complications. So you know, due to the infections, most of the infection cause the complications, and that complications are due to the gram-negative bacteria. And most common complication caused by the gram-negative bacteria is the septic shock. What is that? Septic shock. So listen, You will do the pelvic ultrasound. On the pelvic ultrasound, you will check there could be a gas shadow in the uterine cavity that is due to the Clostridium perfringens, and then you will feel there could be a septic shock, that is the complication, and that septic shock is mostly due to the gram-negative bacteria. Clear? And also there could be other complication, that is the DIC. So we have studied how the DIC can happen, that is disseminated intravascular coagulopathy or coagulation. So here, what is your investigation of choice? Next point is the investigation. How will you investigate? So investigation is in the laboratory, you will check the WBC. So what is the WBC? Raised or less or normal? In the lab diagnosis,
It will be raised.
we'll check the WBC. WBC will be normal, WBC will be less, or WBC will be raised. Raised definitely, because WBC will be high, raised. Why? Because it is an infection and leukocytes will come to engulf that bacteria or pathogen, so they are raised. Next one, investigations. Other investigation is the high vaginal swab. High vaginal swab, HVS. You will do the high vaginal swab or the HVS. What is this? Is the stick. On that stick you will tie the cotton. This is the cotton rod, and then this is the cervix. Okay, vagina. Here is the fornix of cervix, and this one is the uterus. Okay, so you enter the cotton rod and then touch it to the posterior fornix of the cervix. So these are the posterior fornix of the cervix. So when you remove it, some of the mucopurulent discharge will stuck here. What will stuck here? Mucopurulent or pus will stuck here. Okay, so this is the swab. You will get the high vaginal swab. You will enter the cotton rod from the lower female genital tract and touch it to the posterior fornix of the cervix. So it is touching the posterior fornix of the cervix, and then some of the mucopurulent discharge will stuck here, and send it to the laboratory for the culture and sensitivity. For culture and sensitivity. So you know, gram positive and gram negative, for the culture and sensitivity, they takes at least 3 days. How many days they take? For the culture and sensitivity, you have to wait for the report up to 3 days at least. But you cannot put your patient on wait that your culture report or sensitivity report will come and then I will treat you. So before getting the report, you can treat the patient empirically. Empirically means blindly. So next one is the treatment of the septic shock. So there is a two way of the treatment. One, if your case is mild, and other way of the treatment when your case is severe. Mild septic abortion or severe septic abortion. Mild mean when the septic abortion without complication. Without complication. It means there is no septic shock, there is no DIC. But here with the complication. It means there is a septic shock and the DIC. So in the mild cases, you can go empirically. Sorry, empirically. Empirically means blindly, without knowing the cause. You can treat the, you can go with the triple regime. Which one? Triple regime. Triple regime means you can use the some medicine for gram positive bacteria. Blindly, you can use the medicine for gram negative bacteria and for the anaerobes. So which one medicine is best for the gram positive bacteria? You have studied your infectious disease. Which one medicine is best for the gram-positive bacteria? Three medicine you can use. One for the gram-positive, second for gram-negative, and third for the anaerobes. That is the triple regime that can be used empirically. Because you have not still obtained the culture and sensitivity report, so you can't put your patient on the wait. So you will use that medicine that can kill the gram-positive bacteria, gram-negative bacteria, and the anaerobes. So which one medicine is best prescribed for the gram-positive bacteria?
Sir, some of cephalosporin combined with aminoglycosides.
Yeah, ampicillin. So you will give the ampicillin. Ampicillin for gram-positive bacteria, gentamicin for gram-negative bacteria. Which one? Gentamicin for gram-negative bacteria. And lastly, for the anaerobes, you can give the metronidazole. So triple, these can be used for the mild cases. But when there is a severe cases with the complications, okay, so you will use the empirical treatment. When some complication mean when there is a septic shock or the DIC. So then what can you use? You can use the empirically injections here you will be used because it is a complicated case. So you can use the injection that is the ceftriaxone. Cephalosporins you can be used, and you can use the injections metronidazole. Okay, so ceftriaxone can be used for the gram-positive and gram-negative, and it can be used for the anaerobes. Clear? Injections are preferred for the case when there is a. If after getting the culture and sensitivity report, you can treat it accordingly. If you get the culture and sensitivity report and you feel there is only gram-negative bacteria, then you will give only which one? Gentamicin. If you feel there is only anaerobes, then you can use the metronidazole. So after getting the culture and sensitivity report, you can treat it accordingly. Clear? So here we have completed our all the subtypes of the spontaneous abortion. Now move on to the other type of the abortion, major type of the abortion, that is the recurrent abortion. This is mostly happens in our community. So that is the recurrent abortion. So nowadays, this term is not used. What is the reciprocal of this term? What is used nowadays? Here is the nowadays we use it recurrent pregnancy loss. Recurrent pregnancy loss. This is the new term. Whenever you will check any book, you will open the Google. Recurrent abortion is replaced by the recurrent pregnancy loss. Nowadays, recurrent abortion is not used term. So, what is the definition of the recurrent pregnancy loss? When there is a loss of 3 or more than 3 pregnancies. Loss of, here this shows 3 or more than 3 pregnancies. That is the recurrent pregnancy loss. So loss of 3 or more than 3 pregnancies. So what are the etiologies? Most common, most important, extremely important etiology. I am writing the most common, extremely important etiology is the chromosomal etiology. Chromosomal. This is the most common, most important etiology. That is the chromosomal defect. Okay, so when there is a chromosomal etiology, further it is divided into 2 categories. When fetal cardiac activity is present, chromosomal etiology plus fetal cardiac activity is present, then chances of the recurrent abortions are 4.5%. When chromosomal abnormality is present, but fetal cardiac activity along with fetal cardiac activity is absent, negative, then chances of the recurrent abortion or a recurrent pregnancy loss will increases and they will become 13 to 20%. What does it mean? I repeat it, don't worry. Most common etiology, most common cause of the recurrent pregnancy loss is the chromosomal defect. So the baby, fetus, who has the chromosomal defect, plus in that baby, if the fetal cardiac activity is present, keep in mind positive sign mean fetal cardiac activity is present with chromosomal defect, then chances of the recurrent abortions are 4.5%. This also shows when the baby who has the chromosomal defect and the fetal cardiac activity will appear after 7th week, then chances of the recurrent abortions are less. When the baby or fetus who has the chromosomal defect plus fetal cardiac activity is absent, then chances of the recurrent pregnancy loss will increase. It means chances of the recurrent pregnancy loss are more less than 7th week. Chances of the recurrent pregnancy loss are less after the 7th week. Clear? So most common etiology is the chromosomal defect. With fetal cardiac activity present, fetal cardiac activity absent. If chromosomal defect, when with fetal cardiac activity present, then chances of the recurrent abortion are less. When there is a chromosomal defect with fetal cardiac activity is absent, then chances of the recurrent abortions are more, 13 to 20%. Clear? Next etiology. Second etiology is the anatomical. Anatomical means when the anatomy of the mother is defective. But how the anatomy of the mother can be defective? There is a defect in the uterus. So which one defect in the uterus can happen and that can cause the recurrent pregnancy loss? So first one is the septate uterus. Septate uterus. So when there is a septate uterus, that is the most common Mullerian defect. I will discuss what is the Mullerian agenesis. Just only trust me, this is the most common Mullerian defect. You know, uterus is formed from the Mullerian duct. So most common Mullerian defect is the, okay, chromosomal can be any Down syndrome, trisomy, or the monosomy. So that is the chromosomal defect. So septate uterus, look, here is the uterus. Okay, this is uterine cavity, here is the vagina and cervix. Okay, here is a question, sir, can a weak sperm can cause the miscarriage? You know, when the sperm is weak, then the pregnancy or infertility can happen. When the sperm is weak, then infertility can happen. Abortion cannot happen. Abortion is different from the infertility. So what is the role of the sperm? Role of the sperm is that to cause the fertilization or infertility. Look at here. So this is the uterus and this is uterine cavity. If inside the uterine cavity there's a septum, this kind of the uterus is the septate uterus. So this septate uterus can cause the recurrent pregnancy loss. So this is the septate uterus. It can cause the recurrent pregnancy loss. And other anatomical defect is the bicornuate uterus. Bicornuate uterus. When the uterus has two horn, two cornu, so that uterus, look at this is the uterus Here, this uterus has the two uterine cavities. This is the one uterine cavity. This is the other uterine cavity, and it will come down. Two horn. This is the bicornuate uterus. Clear? And this bicornuate uterus can also cause the recurrent pregnancy loss. But most of the time, this bicornuate uterus can handle the pregnancy, but oftenly it can cause the recurrent pregnancy loss. Okay, third one etiology, other than anatomical. Next etiologies. First one chromosomal, second one is the anatomical, and third one is the maternal. Maternal etiologies. When mother has some diseases, like the mother has the diabetes mellitus, so we call it gestational diabetes, SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus, hypothyroidism. Okay, so that can cause the recurrent pregnancy loss. Now you will tell me, fourth one reason, if I write, when there is a maternal torch infections. Now you will help me. You have studied all these torch infections. So all these torch infections, can they cause the recurrent pregnancy loss? If mother has the torch infection, maybe mother has the rubella infection. This rubella infection can cause the recurrent pregnancy loss? No. Why? Because when mother at the first pregnancy, mother has the rubella infection, this pregnancy will be lost. But in the second pregnancy, mother has developed the antibodies against the rubella. So mother has resistance. So this pregnancy will not lost. So it means maternal torch infection cannot cause recurrent abortion. So torch infections are not involved for the recurrent infections. Why? Because at the first pregnancy, whether mother is infected with the rubella, but at the next time when the mother is pregnant, again rubella will infect, mother has developed the antibodies against that rubella. So it means torch infections will not cause the recurrent pregnancy loss. Clear? And last one etiology. Is the thrombophilia. Thrombus formation in the arteries and veins of the placenta. Thrombus formation. Where the thrombus formation? This is the uterus. Inside the uterus is a fetus, and here is the placenta. So when there is a placental membranes and then placenta, umbilical cord, so there is a thrombus formation here. So blood supply or the nutritional supply will be deteriorated. So thrombophilia is the tendency to form a thrombus in the young vessels of placenta. Thrombus formation, tendency of thrombus formation. That is thrombophilia. Okay. So we can handle it. It could be a maternal or it could be a fetal, but most commonly could be a maternal defect. So what are the causes of the thrombophilia? What are the etiologies of the thrombophilia? So this thrombophilia can be acquired, or this thrombophilia can be inherent. So it is the inherited thrombophilia, or it can be acquired. So there are some inherited causes of the thrombophilia, and there are some acquired causes of the thrombophilia. So in the inherited causes of the thrombophilia, there could be a factor V gene mutation. You know, there is a factor 5 gene mutation. When you discuss the intrinsic factor or the extrinsic factors of the coagulation, so when factor V or the factor 5, if the factor 5 gene is mutated, so that could be a thrombus formation. And when second inherited factor is the when there is a gene mutation for the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene mutation, it can cause the thrombus formation. Third inherited reason, when there is a prothrombin gene mutation, you know, prothrombin gene mutation. Fourth reason is the antithrombin 3 deficiency. So deficiency of antithrombin. Antithrombin means that will stop from the thrombin formation. Antithrombin 3. Fifth one, there's a deficiency of the anticoagulant protein, and that protein is the protein C and protein S. So when these protein C and protein S are the anticoagulatory protein, so inheritedly there could be a gene mutation for the factor V or factor 5 methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase gene mutation, prothrombin gene mutation, deficiency of the antithrombin, and the deficiency of the anticoagulatory protein, and that protein is the protein C and protein S. Next one of the acquired causes. So when there is an antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, APLA syndrome, APLA syndrome. APLA syndrome means A stands for anti, P phospho, L lipid, A antibody syndrome. What is the antiphospholipid antibody syndrome? You know, every membrane of your body is made up of the phospholipid. Every membrane of your cell is made up of the phospholipid or lipid bilayer. So in this lipid bilayer, there are some proteins, and that are the some glucose, glycoprotein, glycolipids. Against these proteins, glycoprotein, glycolipids, and there are the antibody. It is autoimmune kind of the disease. It means antibodies are produced against the lipids of our own cell membrane. And these lipids, these antibodies can be against our cardiolipin, beta 2 glycoprotein. So their antibody can be against cardiolipin, can be against our beta 2, okay, can be against lupus, coagulant. So these antibodies are produced against the cardiolipin. So these are the lipids molecules. So this is the antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. It means there is a production of antibody against the lipids of the cell membrane. That lipids can be glycolipids, cardiolipin, or the phospholipids. Okay, so there are multiple lipids. Against that, there could be a production of the antibody. Clear? So how will you know that antiphospholipid antibody syndrome has occurred? So what is the criteria for knowing APLA syndrome? So what is the criteria for APLA syndrome? Antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. What is the criteria? So there are the two type of the criteria. One is the lab criteria and other one is the clinical criteria. Clinical criteria, other is the lab criteria. Okay. First, we should go with the lab criteria. So in the lab, what will you check? You will check the antibody. What will you check? You will check the antibody against, you will send a sample and check the antibody against which one? Anti-phospholipid antibody, you know, against phospholipid. And these antibody will be, could be antigen and IgG or IgM. If you check the IgG or IgM is present against phospholipid, that technique is called direct visualization. It means directly you are checking the antibody against phospholipids. And you will check the antibody against lupus anticoagulant. Lupus anticoagulant. So you will check the antibody against the phospholipids, and that antibody will be IgG or IgM. If in the blood IgG or IgM are present against phospholipid, so it means EPLA syndrome has happened. Next one is the clinical criteria. Clinically, how will you check it? Clinically, when you check, when there is a arterial or venous thrombosis, clinically when you check the chances of the thrombophilia. Clear? Next one, when the baby is morphologically okay. Clinically, next one clinical is baby morphologically, the baby or fetus is okay. Morphologically, baby is fine, but that baby has been aborted after 10 weeks of the pregnancy, and that has abortion has occurred after 10 weeks of the pregnancy. Then you can think about the thrombophilia. Baby has no chromosomal defect, mother has no anatomical defect, still baby is morphologically okay, but you feel abortion has occurred after 10 weeks of the gestation. And then you think third criteria, if 3 or more than 3 abortion has happened before 10 weeks. Abortions before 10 weeks of gestation. Then you can think about the EPLA syndrome. Again repeating for the new joiners, what are the clinical criteria? It means in the clinical criteria, when you think that the arterial or venous thrombophilia has happened once or more than one time before, then you can think about the thrombophilia. Next reason, when the baby is morphologically fine and the abortion has happened after 10 weeks, and that abortion is one or more than one. One or more than one abortion has happened after 10 weeks when the baby is morphologically fine. When you think that more than three or more than 3 abortion has happened before 10th weeks of the gestation, then you can think about EPLA syndrome. Clear? Next one is the, what is the management of the recurrent pregnancy loss? So here is the management. Management of recurrent pregnancy loss. So there is no specific management. So first, when you think, when there is a thrombophilia, how will you treat it? When there is a thrombophilia, how will you treat it? So you can treat it because thrombus formation. Please give such medicine that will prevent from the thrombus formation. So you can give the low molecular weight heparin, low molecular weight heparin. You know, heparin is the anticoagulatory, so it will not help for the coagulation. So there will be no thrombus formation. When again you can give the antiplatelet drugs, antiplatelet drugs. So when the platelets will not coagulate, antiplatelets drugs. You can give the aspirin also. Okay, so such drugs can be used when the reason is the thrombophilia. It means here treat the underlying cause. Management is the treat underlying cause. Very one line management. Treat the underlying cause. So when underlying cause is thrombophilia, you can treat it by giving the low molecular weight heparin, or you can treat it by giving the antiplatelets drugs. Clear? But when the cause is anatomical, underlying cause is anatomical, then definitely you will perform surgery. Anatomical cause. So what is the anatomical cause? We have studied there could be a septate uterus. So when the cause is septate uterus, how can you treat it? You know, so septate uterus is one of the most important cause of the recurrent pregnancy loss. So you will do this surgery. So that surgery is the stereoscopic resection. Stereoscopic resection. What is the stereoscopic resection? Look at here. This is the uterus, uterine cavity. In this, there is a septate or the septum. Look at here. Here is the vagina and so on. So you will enter the instruments here from here, and that instrument will go into the uterine cavity and cut it here. All the cut it here. After cutting, it will make the proper uterus and then remove it out. Okay, so make a section. You will cut this area and dissect it. So that is the stereoscopic resection. Stereoscopic resection, that is the surgery. So septate uterus is treated by the surgery, and name of the surgery is the stereoscopic resection. So when the cause is the bicarnoate uterus, then here is also surgery, and that name of the surgery is the Strassman metroplasty. Strassman metroplasty. You know, like plastic surgery. Strassman, S-T-R-A-S-S, Strassman metroplasty. So what is the Strassman metroplasty? Okay, here you can look at this is the uterus that is coming down and making up with the uterus. Okay, and the Strassman hysteroplasty, Strassman metroplasty, what will you do? You will make a cut here, triangular cut here. You will cut this area of the uterus properly. We are cutting this area, triangular shape area of the uterus, surgical incision, and then attach these two walls of the uterus. You know, this is the wall of uterus. Attach these two walls of the uterus. Stitch these two walls of the uterus. So definitely this area is cut down, so uterus will become normal. Okay, cut this area, bicarnate area, or incise this bicarnate area, and then retach, insect these two walls of the uterus. There will be anterior wall. This is the anterior wall, and definitely there will be a posterior wall. Attach them, posterior anterior wall. Just this triangular area has been dissected. Clear? And that name of this surgery is the Strassman metroplasty. So this is the treatment or management of the recurrent pregnancy loss. So reason why its older name was the recurrent abortion and new name is the recurrent pregnancy loss. When the female lost its pregnancy before 24 weeks of the gestation, or female lost its pregnancy after 24 weeks of the gestation in the form of stillbirth. So feeling of the females are the same. Both females are the same. Maybe I can tell you. Here is the one female who has lost her baby before 24 weeks. You can call it abortion. But other female, second female who has lost her baby after 24 weeks, but that baby was stillbirth. Stillbirth. So in both cases, female A1 and female 2, both has lost her baby. So therefore, recurrent abortion is not a proper term. Now we use it, the recurrent pregnancy lost, because in both cases, both female has lost the baby. This female also has lost the baby. So both have the same feeling. So we call it recurrent pregnancy loss. So whereas you are mostly medically, you will think about the thrombophilia, or you will think about the inherited cause of thrombophilia, acquired cause of the thrombophilia, or you will think about the treatment of the thrombophilia or the Ehlers syndrome, antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. Okay, so the last topic is the induced abortion. So inshallah, tomorrow we have the neurology class. So we will complete this induced abortion in the next class and also continue with the next lecture. Okay, so I will give you some clinical scenario or clinical cases related to the all kind of the abortion. You have to solve it out, and then we will start with induced abortion. And tomorrow we will go with the neurology, but your attendance should be appreciable. So one student at the Sayyida Hafsa Fruka was still confused. So don't worry. So be careful, because you sometimes send